Welcome everyone. How are you? Sorry guys, things have been a little wild today. I apologize for the wait. I appreciate everybody's patience. I'm still getting my stuff together here. Sorry. Gotta get my coffee in me. All right, a lot of folks in here. Yeah, so last night seemed to stir up a little bit in the old YouTube community. Things have gotten a little things last night seemed to get people's wheels turning, seemed to get people waking up, seemed to get the ignorant to it seemed to get the ignorant angry. I mean, Limey went live like 3 times since. I mean, it's like it's just funny to me, dude. The glare is a liar. The glare is a liar. And I'm like, I showed proof. Like, you're gonna have to get it through your head, Limey. You're gonna have to get it through your head. All right. Like, first of all, let me cover something. I never claimed to have the results of the SANE exam. That's the whole point. I haven't seen the results. Nobody's seen the results of the SANE exam. That's the whole point. They haven't been released. Why? Why haven't they been released? And I just showed that there was reason, that reason to believe that they are not being released deliberately. That's what I showed. I showed proof that there's reason to believe that. I didn't say that's the case. I didn't say for a fact that these are being hidden deliberately. What I said was that what I did was I showed proof that there was reason to believe that. Enough reason to ask questions, if you will. So that's all. That's all. And I'm going to show a little bit more reason to ask questions today, because I'm going to ask some hard questions, some very difficult questions. I mean, yo, Limey, just get it, okay? I'm the governor. Limey. Get it through your skull. Get it through your noodle. Get it through your spotted dick. I'm the governor. So, I was recently provided with a transcript of the October 2020 deposition with Kelly Long, and I'm a little at this point right now. I've been real like, okay, I don't know if I feel comfortable showing this. I don't know if I feel comfortable showing that. But as much as the people representing this woman has done to people in my community, because those of you that have been subscribed to me for a long time understand and know this about me. I have a very, very strong sense of community. I love the YouTube community. I even love the parts that make me mad, because I like to feud with them sometimes. I like to go head to head with them sometimes. This is what's beautiful about this platform, is it allows us debate. It is a debate arena worldwide. So I just simply see it that way. I express my opinions on here. I'm grateful to be able to do so, and I enjoy doing it. And I respect others who do it in a very scrupulous fashion. And I like to protect those who do things in a scrupulous fashion, if I can. Think of it as being neighborly. And I was on panel with a new YouTube acquaintance. His name is Ken Jennings. He has a channel called Ken's Counseling Couch. As you know, recently he was doxxed. And A lot of people thought it was Critical K. It was not Critical K. It was not Critical K. It was this Lisa person who claims to be best friends with Kelly Long. See, now when you start doing stuff like that, you take a guy and you go and you get him deliberately fired. You go and get this man deliberately fired from his job. A job where I could tell this guy has a good heart, because I've emailed him a couple of times, but today was the first time that I actually got to speak with him and have a conversation with him. And we did it on his channel, and it was a very pleasurable experience. He's a very, very nice guy. And he seems to be in this for the right reasons, which tells me that he was in the profession that he is in for the right reasons, especially the way that he explained it. And what you did, this Lisa person, whoever you are, what you did was you robbed good people who needed help from someone that they trust to confide in and help them for petty reasons. And you lied. More importantly, you lied in your email to his employers. More importantly. And this is unacceptable. This is something that, to a certain degree, I take personally. Because if we see wrong, this is what we do here. We call it out. It's what we do. And I'm seeing a lot of wrong going on. And I'm only seeing it coming from people who claim to represent Kelly Long. How can that be a coincidence? Because it's not. There's no way that it is. So I at this point, you know, I'm done. I've been sitting on stuff that makes me go, man, Kelly, I don't know about her, man. But everyone seems to be speaking up for this person. Right? Everyone seems to be speaking up for this person. And everyone who does turns out to do something really shady. Turns out to be someone who either goes and gets someone fired from their job or has a history of where they're either being sued currently or have been sued for defamation of character. To me, that's a credibility issue right there. If this were a court of law and I was an attorney and asking KJ or CK if they were on the stand and I went, is it true you are being sued or have been sued or currently being sued? Just answer the question, please. Your Honor, no more questions. That would have been it. That'd have been it. Credibility shot. Credibility shot. And then you got this person, you got this other person who is under Kelly Long's employ, according to her. This Laura Elkin person. She's under Kelly Long's employ, according to Laura Elkin. And she has been throwing stuff at every YouTube creator that dares breathe the wrong way in Kelly Long's direction. And, you know, and it's done nothing. It's really funny. It's really funny. It's like imagine like a big imagine like a big boss man, right? Imagine like a big boss man, and he's got that little dude that's like his bodyguard, but never gets anything done. He's just there to look really, really intimidating. And everybody just goes, get out the way, little man. Just moves him. You know what I mean? Like that's that's how I see Laura Elkin, because she hasn't done anything to nobody. A lot of threats, a lot of big talk. You know what I mean? But she can't escape the fact that all we're doing here is exercising our First Amendment rights. That's all we're doing. You can never take that away. You just can't. And the more that you try to shut us up, the more we see you as somebody who's, you know, I'm that guy that's like, let people talk, man. I know what's true. I know what ain't. What other people think about me ain't none of my business. That's just how I look at things. What other people think or feel about me, it ain't none of my business. So what we're going to do tonight, now I'm going to be, completely honest with you guys. I have not read through this entire thing. So some of the stuff that you're going to get out of me is reaction, but I read enough of it to where I'm like, okay, this needs to be talked about. Because what we're going to be hearing is sworn testimony from Kelly Long, a transcript of sworn testimony from Kelly Long being questioned regarding this case. Now, there's a lot of information in there that I don't feel is relevant, and I have no desire or reason to disclose it. I have no desire to go over her job, what she does, how much she makes. There's all these things. What I am focused on is whatever's in this thing pertaining to Sophie, to Sophie's claims, and to Kelly's what she has to say as far as her involvement in that and what she knows and doesn't know about it. So we have this issue right now with where Sophie is basically, she's claiming that she has been essayed by Kelly's fiance, Jake Bellington, and multiple men. Number unknown. I want to be clear about that. Number unknown. So now these are Sophie's claims. The question is whether or not she was coached into saying these things, but the more evidence that gets shown regarding this case, the less I believe that it's even possible. And I do believe that Michael is being railroaded to a certain degree. I'm not saying that he didn't coach Sophie, because I don't know. I wasn't there. But so far, I don't believe it. I'll tell you that much. But I mean, I have no way of proving it. I have a way of looking at things and forming an opinion, but it's not proof. It's a lot of evidence, but it doesn't prove one particular thing necessarily. And yet, even Ken, he confirmed today, he's never even heard anyone. He's never read anything that says from a professional that Sophie was coached. They talk about parental alienation, but there's nothing that actually says that Sophie was coached. So I find that very interesting. So what I've got here, as you can see, that's the cover sheet for this thing. And all right. And this is where the case number is. So as you can see, this is the actual deposition. And it says, this is hard to read because the print's really small. Oral deposition of Kelly Long, produced as a witness at the instance of the petitioner, and duly sworn, was taken in the above styled and numbered cause on the 30th day of October, 2020, from 9:59 a.m. to 4:10 p.m. before Christy Notwanti, CSR, CVRCM, and in front of the state of Texas, reported by stenographic means at the, this is really small print, guys, I apologize. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah. That's not important anyway. You guys get the idea. So give me 1 second here, and I'm going to just get to the part that disturbs me, because the most of it is give me 1 second here. What the hell, man? All right. This was a much bigger print when I read it before. All right, we're way ahead. Now there's like 200 something pages to this thing, guys. So keep in mind, maybe I can find a bigger print of it. Bear with me, guys. Give me 1 second, because I apologize, but it's just really, really difficult to read because the print is really small. Sorry, this is really slow. What? Come on, man. Here we go. There we go. All right. We're almost there, guys. Sorry. I had to like look for it somewhere. All right. Okay, we're almost there. Sorry. Here we go. All right. This is much better. Okay. This is what I had up before. All right. Show you guys what I'm looking at here. No, not that. Why is it not showing it? That's really weird. All right, well, whatever. I have it in front of me and I'm going to read it. So, all right. So it starts with the, for me, it starts with the Sophie thing where she is at some point here. At some point here, Kelly talks about how she was taken to the doctor for an infection. Okay. Now, well, and I believe Michael and Courtney were the ones to take her to the doctor. Now, apparently this is about a conversation that took place All right, here we go. Okay. I'm just trying to pinpoint the beginning of this. All right, almost there. Okay. Yeah, there's a lot of questioning about her conversation with this pediatrician. All right, but man, it's hard to find the beginning of it because they keep kind of repeating. She keeps having to repeat the question a lot. So she dodges this question a lot. Okay, so I'll just start here. So one of Michael's attorneys is asking Kelly, okay, so did Dr. Morgan talk to you about any other testing that she had ordered for Sophie? And she said, not that I recall. And she then asked Kelly, okay, and were you upset by the fact that she had gone to see Dr. Morgan? Kelly responds, no. And then she asks, okay, do you think that was being a good parent for Michael to take Sophie in if she was having symptoms to get treatment, correct? Kelly answers, yes. Okay, so you don't fault Michael at all for taking Sophie to Dr. Morgan? No. Okay, no issues with Dr. Morgan. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize that was a question. I thought you were commenting to yourself, Kelly says. And she says, do you have any issues with Dr. Morgan? And then she answers, I don't have any issues with Dr. Morgan. She says, okay, did you ask Dr. Morgan to stop treating Sophie? She says, I informed her that she had a pediatrician that had been seeing her for 5 years. I didn't tell her to stop. I didn't tell her to stop seeing Sophie. Sorry, it was a continuing page. She said, I would have never seen her in the first place if I had known and someone had informed me there was a mother, there was a custody case, and there was already a pediatrician that had been seeing this little girl for an extended time period. So she asks, so as a result of the conversation with Dr. Morgan, somehow you felt the need to let Dr. Morgan know that there was a custody case going on. And she said, I can't recall the exact conversation, but since I wasn't listed as a parent, I'm sure she had questions. I can't recall the exact conversation. She says, but she would have gotten that information from you on the phone call in August of 2020, right? She answers, when I wasn't listed as a parent, yes. She asks, your answer is yes. You told Dr. Morgan there's a custody case. She says, I don't recall the exact conversation. I'm saying I could see myself having answered that if she asked the question. I don't recall the exact conversation, whatever you want to know about it. So she's clearly like dodging the question here. So she's saying, yeah, I'm not asking you a hypothetical though, Kelly, because and then Kelly cuts her off and says, I don't recall. And my answer is, I don't know. And so the attorney goes, okay, but you specifically told me that Dr. Morgan's position was she would never have seen Sophie if she had known. Sorry, next page here. She would know if she had known that there was an open custody case. She starts this answer and say, I never. And then she continues her question saying she would never have seen Sophie. And then Kelly's attorney, Mr. Rutson, cuts in and he says, I apologize for interrupting, but I was actually just going to ask my client to wait and let you finish your question. Kelly says, okay, sorry. So he's, this is her attorney's doing his job. He's trying to help her. And he says, okay, so he says, let Mrs. Lishman finish her question before you answer. Kelly says, okay, sure. Now, Okay, sorry, I went a little too fast here and I lost my place. Okay, so Michael's attorney, Miss Lishman, she says, I'm just restating what I understood your testimony to be. You stated Dr. Morgan said she would have never seen Sophie or treated her if she would have known that there was a custody case. So my question is, did you tell Dr. Morgan there was a custody case? He says, I can't answer that question because I believe what you just restated back to me is not accurately representing what I said. And she asks, what did you say? What did you say, Dr. Morgan? And she answers, what did you say to Dr. Morgan? I guess the stenographer missed the two. She answers, I said to Dr. Morgan, well, no, what Dr. Morgan said to me, because what you just said is she said she's not treating you because there's a custody case. That is not what Dr. Morgan said. What Dr. Morgan said is I would not have treated her if I had known there was already a pediatrician seeing this child. This is what Dr. Morgan said. So she says, did Dr. Morgan know about the custody case after the call with you? Kelly answers, I don't know. She says, okay. And as you sit here today, it sounds to me just kind of because we're beating this down a little bit that you really don't want to concede that you told Dr. Morgan there was a custody case. Is that what's going on, Kelly? And Mr. Rootson, Kelly's attorney, objects, says leading. And Kelly's like, I think that's pretty. So you can see it's pretty heated in here right now. What's going on here is pretty heated in this room. Mr. Russell says, go ahead. And Kelly says, yeah, I mean, what he just said. I don't recall the exact conversation. I'm not refusing or trying not to answer anything. Like, I don't have that conversation memorized. And the intent of it was to look out for the well-being of Sophie, not to create any sort of animosity or difficult situation. Okay, but as a result, Ms. Lishman continues, okay, but as a result of you calling Dr. Morgan, who was treating Sophie and had found issues going on Sophie and was getting her tested and making sure that Sophie was okay, which you say is appropriate parenting, take the child to the doctor when she's got the symptoms, right? As a result of your phone call, Dr. Morgan decided she was not going to treat Sophie anymore. Okay, so what she's getting at here, does everybody see what's going on here? It's pretty fascinating. So what's going on here is Kelly is basically, she admits here in the deposition that it's good parenting, that if you're a parent and you have your child with you and your child experiences symptoms of something, you take them to the doctor to get checked out when they're with you. That's the responsible parenting thing to do. But yet, for some reason, allegedly, Kelly had called Dr. Morgan and for some reason had a problem with Dr. Morgan treating Sophie when she already has a pediatrician. And she's basically implying that Michael's attorney is basically implying here that she let her know that this is a custody fight and you know, my husband can't take, or my ex can't take this child to any doctor he wants because we're in a custody fight right now. And for me, that's a bad look for the very reason that the whole point was built up on. And the whole point was built up on, if you're a responsible parent, your child has symptoms, what are you supposed to do? First thing that comes to your mind is you take them to the doctor, period. That's it. So, but for some reason, Kelly seemed to have a problem with this. Now, she doesn't admit to it here, but I mean, what are we looking at here? What do we, you know what I'm saying? So her response, her answer is that Dr. Morgan decided that she wasn't going to treat Sophie anymore. So, I mean, and the implication here is that Kelly intimidated her in some way, you know, or just, yeah, led her in some way. Maybe intimidate's a strong word. And Kelly says no. And so Miss Lishman says, okay, but your phone call sounds like the tone of it, at least. The intent of it was to make sure that Dr. Morgan would not treat Sophie anymore. Kelly responds, incorrect. And then Miss Lishman responds, okay, why did you feel the need to call Dr. Morgan and let her know that Sophie had another pediatrician? So apparently Kelly was the one that made the phone call. So what was the point of the phone call? If she's calling her, if it's not just to go, okay, well, I mean, I'm the parent. Can you share with me what's wrong with my daughter? You know, out of concern. But apparently this concern conversation never took place, because at no point does Kelly say that these words came out of her mouth. I find that fascinating. Okay, so why did you feel the need to call Dr. Morgan and let her know that Sophie had another pediatrician? She says, I didn't call her to let her know she had another pediatrician. And then now she says, okay, I called her to ask about Sophie's well-being and diagnosis and what the next steps were. And then she says, so the implication is that she didn't do that. According to Kelly here, I should have kept reading, but according to Kelly here, she says that's what she was calling her for. Now, Kelly says, throughout the course of the conversation, the topic came up. It was not the intent of the phone call. The intent of the phone call was always Sophie's well-being. So I'll give it to her there. She did say that. And she says, so Michael's attorney says, okay, and in your opinion at that time, was it in Sophie's well-being to be treated by Dr. Morgan for the pinworms and the hemorrhoids and the other issues? And she says, Dr. Morgan told me that Sophie had finished what she needed to be treated for with her. And Lichman says, okay, that's not quite what I'm asking you. Was it in Sophie's well-being at the time that Dr. Morgan treated her for the pinworms and hemorrhoids and other issues she was having at the time? And Kelly responds, when Sophie went in or when I talked to Dr. Morgan? So she's asking. She responds, well, I mean, you're making a distinction. So you're saying there's something different about those two time periods. Kelly says, well, when I talked to her, she had already been on the medication for a period of time and no longer needed to be on it. So yes, there are two different distinct times. So she says, okay, so what I'm hearing you say is when you talked to Dr. Morgan, when you called her, it was no longer in Sophie's best interest that Dr. Morgan treat her. She says, no, when I called Dr. Morgan, Sophie had already completed what Dr. Morgan had asked her to complete. She says, okay, I recall you testifying, though, that Dr. Morgan let you know that there were some other tests that had been ordered. Little twist right there. Kelly says, yes, okay. And she got the results that day. Like, as I was on the phone with her, they came in. I didn't need to contact her again. So Kelly's response is that the results actually did come in. So she says, so you determined that it was no longer in Sophie's best interest that Dr. Morgan treat her. Dr. Rootson goes, objection form, or Mr. Rootson, yeah. And Kelly starts to answer and go, I said, because you can tell she's getting heated here. And Kelly's attorney says, go ahead. And Kelly says, it was definitely in Sophie's best interest to be treated medically. At that point in time, the children were supposed to be in my care, and I had already scheduled on an appointment with her pediatrician here. Or, well, we're not in Frisco, but in Frisco. So right. I get what she's doing there. Why did you schedule an appointment in Frisco? Her answer was, I want to make sure that the boys had been seen since the doctor told me that pinworm was extremely contagious. So I made appointments for all 3 children. Okay, why did you make an appointment for Sophie if you had to decide she had already finished her treatment? So Kelly's attorney objects. Form. Ms. Lishman says, what's the basis for that? What's wrong with that question? Basically objecting his objection. Like, what is your problem with that question? I mean, because again, the question is pretty simple, guys. Kelly just said that Sophie had completed her treatment with Dr. Morgan, and that was it, right? There was no reason to keep seeing Dr. Morgan because of Sophie's well-being. Her answer was because of Sophie's well-being. There was no reason. She looked into that. Dr. Morgan saw it through. Case closed. Sophie's good. That's it, right? Now, she says the pinworm is very contagious. So that's her reason for an appointment, for making a doctor appointment for all 3 children in Frisco. But if Sophie had already been treated, why take her back to the doctor? You know what I'm saying? So that's what Miss Lishman's getting at here. If Sophie's already been treated and she's all good, and that was the point of your phone call with Dr. Morgan, then why feel the need to take her to a doctor in Frisco? So Kelly's attorney doesn't like this. He objects. And then she's like, what's wrong with the question? It's a perfectly legitimate question. So his answer is it's mischaracterizing her testimony. And so Kelly asks, can you repeat the question? And she says, okay, why did you make an appointment for Sophie as well if you had already determined that she had completed her treatment? Kelly answers, because I'm not a medical professional and it's not my decision to determine if something is ongoing or not ongoing, and she should be seen by her normal pediatrician. So Sophie started reporting systems in June that sounded a lot like a urinary tract infection or some kind of an infection in her genital area. Okay. And that's when Michael had gotten the kids for his period of summer possession. My question to you is, had Sophie been reporting any symptoms like that to you before she left for summer? Kelly answers yes. So Ms. Lishman asks, okay, when did she first start having those reported symptoms? Kelly answers, Thursday before they were supposed to leave for the summer. And what did she tell you? Kelly answers, she made a rather inflammatory statement that said, and this makes me sick to my stomach. I don't even want to read that. So I'm going to move on. But she basically describes a sharp pain in her private area. But she's very colorful about it. So that's why I refuse to read it. So Ms. Lishman says, you described that as inflammatory. So what did you do about the statement? Kelly says, well, it was 7 o'clock. I said, the doctor is closed right now. Let's take a shower. Let's take a bath. We'll see how you feel in the morning. And if it still feels like that, I will call the doctor and we'll get in for a sick visit. So Ms. Lishman says, okay. And Kelly says, in the morning, she said she was fine and that it was not an issue. And then she says, had Sophie ever made a statement like that to you in the past or used language like that? Kelly answers, no. So Ms. Lishman says, had Michael ever shared with you that she had made concerning statements like that to him in the past? Kelly says, no. Okay. Very important question there. Has Michael ever told you at this point in time, prior to the summer of that year, where she ends up spending time with Michael while she's still with Kelly, prior to that, she's asking if Michael ever said that she had made any concerning statements like that. Kelly confirms no, that she never heard that from Michael. So Ms. Lichman says, do you recall him letting you know that, I guess it was 2016 or 2017, she had made a comment talking about putting a cookie, and she says, actually, no. That I heard about that one online a couple of weeks ago for the first time. And so I guess she's speaking of a Facebook post once this already became very public. Give me 1 second here, guys. Let me look at the chat a little bit here for a second. I want to make sure everybody's doing all right. Is everybody doing all right? Because this is intense. This is intense stuff, guys. I realize that, but it's important that we get this perspective of the silent one. I am the silent one who is causing a lot of damage into this community, and indirectly, kind of like a mafia boss, and it's really getting on my nerves. So, since so many people of this community have fallen victim to her at this point, I think it's only fair to share this information. Okay, sorry. I'm done here. Okay, so Ms. Lichman asks, do you recall him letting you know that, I guess it was, okay, no, sorry about that. I already read that. All right. She says she just heard it online for the first time. Regarding the statement about a cookie. And Ms. Lichman says, okay, so did you let Michael know when you dropped them off, when you dropped the kids off for his summer visit, that she had made that statement? And this is the inflammatory statement she's referring to, guys. Kelly's answer is, by the time I dropped them off, it had been 4 or 5 days since that statement, and she had not mentioned anything further, so it did not occur to me. So basically, her answer is no. So by the time she goes to drop Sophie off to Michael for the summer, at no point does she mention this, that Sophie makes this statement. As much, I could tell you this, as little as my ex and I got along, I could say when my little girl was 9 years old, if she had made a statement like that to her, I would have definitely been told about it. Didn't matter if a month went by. I would have been told about it. Now, I realize that's not everybody, but I just wanted to put that out there. So when she had the symptoms at Michael's home, does that seem at all odd to you, or was that kind of consistent with something that you had heard? Kelly says, well, I didn't find out about it until several weeks after that. It was consistent with Michael's behavior, yeah. Lichman says, okay, I'm just going to object as non-responsive, because she just didn't answer the question. So Ms. Lichman, she goes, my question to you was, it would have been consistent that she would have reported that kind of symptom on Michael's time because she had reported the same symptom to you, right? That's consistent? And Mr. Rootson objects, says form. Kelly says, I can't speak for what Sophie might say to me or to Michael. Ms. Lichman says, okay, I'm going to object again as non-responsive. So you guys can see Miss Lishman's not playing around here. And she's hitting her with some fastballs. And she asks again, my question is, if she was reporting those symptoms to Michael in June, that's consistent with what she reported to you 4 or 5 days earlier. Kelly says, no. Okay, what in your opinion is inconsistent between the symptom that she reported to you and she made an inflammatory statement talking about it feels like a blank blank compared to the statements that she was making when she was on Michael's time? And Kelly's attorney objects again, form. Kelly says, I don't. I can only speak to my understanding of what was communicated to me from Michael, which was that what was itchy, and that was not a symptom that was reported to me. Lishman says, okay, so you're saying it's inconsistent because with you, she reported feeling like a blank in blank, maybe pain. Did she report pain? Kelly answers, she literally just said that, and that's all she said. The question is, did she say it hurt? Kelly says, she just said that. Lishman says, okay. Kelly says, when I asked follow-up questions, she did not respond. I had her take a shower. Ms. Lishman says, so you asked her some follow-up questions and you said that she did not respond to you. Kelly says, I am sure I asked follow-up questions. I don't know what they are. Wow. So Ms. Lishman says, but you recall she wasn't responsive to you? Kelly says, if she had said that there were additional symptoms, I would remember. So no. So Ms. Lishman says, okay, does that concern you that she's not being responsive to your follow-up questions after making what you described as an inflammatory statement? Great question. Fantastic question. Actually, I'm going to read that again. Okay, so does that concern you that she's not being responsive to your follow-up questions after making what you described as an inflammatory statement? Kelly responds, since I can't recall that conversation, I don't know how to answer that question. That question is based on not something that I can recall happening, so you know. And I feel like she said it like, that question is based on not something that I can recall happening. So, you know, I can totally, I just hear that answer being spoken that way. And I don't even know what Kelly sounds like except for those 911 calls. Yeah, I mean, I wasn't there either, Ms. Lishman says. I'm just going off what you just testified to, which is true. The only reference that she's using right here is based on what Kelly just said. So Kelly says, I don't recall. I don't recall what I asked her. All I can tell you is that she didn't give me any additional symptoms other than the blank blank. That's it. Okay, so, and then Kelly says, she interrupts her and says, so she did not provide any additional detail. So you could tell she's pretty heated here in the way she's delivering these answers. She feels pressure. You could tell that she feels pressure. You could tell by the way that she's answering these questions. So, I mean, type of 1, if you feel like she is answering these questions calm and cool, or do you feel that she's answering them? Type of 2, if you feel that she's answering them in a form of you know, being offended and snapping back. I'm curious as how you guys are taking this, because I'm kind of leaning towards 2, but I could see 1 being the case. I think she's using the right words, but she does definitely sound like she is heated. based on the way that she's interrupting her, the way that she continues to answer the question. Like, don't you, the way she's saying these things is like, don't you get it? I just said that. What are you not understanding? That's what she seems like she's trying to hold back from saying, which I find really fascinating. That seems to be the exact vibe of what's going on in this room. And then, okay, so she says, okay, so my question though is, she makes an inflammatory statement and it feels like blank blank. Kelly says, and then your natural instinct as a mother is to ask questions about that, right? And so you recall you probably asked her some follow-up questions. You just don't know, you just don't remember specifically what you have asked her. Is that what you're saying? Kelly says yes. So Ms. Lishman says, okay, but you also recall that she wasn't super responsive to any of the following questions, right? Kelly says, I don't remember her responses. All I can tell you is that if there were symptoms, I would have remembered it. Ms. Lishman says, okay, does it concern you, looking back on this incident that we're talking about, does it concern you at all that your 9-year-old daughter makes an inflammatory statement like that and then doesn't seem to be super responsive to you when you're asking follow-up questions? Kelly says, no, but may I explain why? And then Ms. Lishman says, it doesn't seem at all concerning to you. Okay, that's fine. When she made that statement, you said you never got any sort of treatment from her because by the next morning, she was reporting no symptoms. Kelly says, correct. She says, okay. And as you sit here today, what's your understanding of the history of diagnosis for that, for those symptoms? In other words, as you sit here today, what's your understanding of what she's been diagnosed with, by whom, and when? Kelly says, over what time period? Lishman says, since June of 2020. Kelly says, I don't actually know. I know that she's seen several doctors. I know that the stories have varied, and I've never received any direct information from Michael or Courtney that could have been corroborated by a doctor. Ms. Lishman says, okay. Have you seen medical records? Kelly says, yes. Ms. Lishman says, okay. And so from this medical record, is it your understanding that she was diagnosed in June with vaginitis? Kelly says, yes. Lishman says, okay, and that she was prescribed some antibiotics. Did you know that? Kelly says, I just want to correct. It wasn't June that I found that out. No. She says, okay, well, my question was the diagnosis was in June. Okay, I don't know when the diagnosis was. I didn't find out until July. Okay, but do you know that there was a diagnosis for vaginitis? Kelly says, yes. Do you know what sort of treatment regimen she got from the vaginitis? Kelly says, antibiotics. Okay. Do you know what vaginitis is? No. Have you ever done any sort of independent research to look into why a 9-year-old little girl has that kind of a diagnosis? Kelly says, I have, but she's been diagnosed with that before. Okay. You have done independent research. What research have you done? Kelly says, well, I talked to her pediatrician in 2017, 2016, and she was diagnosed with something like L-lycosolaria or something like that can cause vaginitis. Okay. And then Kelly continues. So she has a condition that makes her susceptible for vaginitis. She says, okay, did you share that with Michael? Kelly says, yes. Ms. Lishman says, when? Kelly says, in 2017, when it happened the first time. Okay. Do you know that in your research, do you know that there can be a correlation between a 9-year-old girl getting a diagnosis of vaginitis and being sexually abused? Kelly says, I did not. She says, okay, does that concern you that there is such a correlation? Kelly says, it would depend on how strong the correlation is. I got to take a break and check with you guys in chat real quick. Okay. What in the hell? So why wouldn't you just answer that question? It depends on how strong the correlation is. This is a mother whose main concern is her daughter. You are hearing sworn testimony right now. You are hearing sworn testimony from a woman who claims that her children are her first priority. And these are her answers for being asked, basically, in so many words, do you care about what your daughter is reporting to you and saying to you? And explain to me how you do. Yo, hold on. Guys, watch what you say in chat, guys. I don't want anything in my chat that even resembles a threat. All right. I understand that this makes people's blood boil. I get that. But we're no better than they are. The reason why I'm doing this is because this is the proper response to people doing dirty shit to people behind the scenes. This is the proper response. We discuss, we form opinions, and we discuss them. What we do not do is directly interfere. That is not welcome in my chat. And I won't have anything to do with anything like that. And if I find out anybody is doing anything like that, they're gone and not welcome in my chat. Ever. Let me read this real quick. Sorry, guys. I'm going to keep looking at chat, guys. I'll just give me 1 second here. But I'm still looking at chat, and I will still and I want to give everybody a chance to cool off real quick before I keep going. There's no reason why we can't act like adults when we hear things like this. I understand it's infuriating. I get that. But there's absolutely no reason why we can't behave like adults when we hear this stuff. Okay? I mean, this is funny to me. Like, so how is she trying to prove this wrong? I'm reading a court document right now. I'm reading a sworn deposition right now. This is a court transcript. This is a deposition transcript right here. So there's nothing to dispute here. There's absolutely nothing to dispute here. These are Kelly's words. These are her answers to these questions. And yet, for some reason, this is not being factored into the court's decision right now. Guys, there's like 250 pages. I'm on page like 40 something, bro. Like, this is crazy. I'm not going to go over this whole thing tonight. No way. That would take forever. I'm going to do this in parts. Yeah, there's just no way. Like, it would take guys, it would take an Oscar-winning screenwriter to make this up. This is a actual court document transcript of a deposition. That is what this is. Okay, so now it gets real, okay? And the reason why I say that, listen to Miss Lishman's next question. Okay, so I guess I'm just going to be real point blank. At any time, have you been concerned that someone may have been sexually abusing Sophie? Kelly's answer is absolutely not. Ms. Lishman says, okay, and at no time have you, tell me if this is true or not, at no time have you given any credence whatsoever to any of the outcries that your daughter has made? Kelly says, yes, I believe Sophie believes that, and that concerns me greatly. Wow. Jesus. Ms. Lishman says, and when I say credence, maybe I should ask the question a different way. At no time, because she already sees that she's dodging the question, right? So at no time have you believed that there was truth in any of the outcries that Sophie made. In other words, what Sophie has said has happened to her. Kelly says, can you define outcry? My God, dude. This is infuriating. Are we talking like forensically through psychologists, or are we talking just, she just said it to anybody? Ms. Lichman says, well, I'm defining outcries as when she's told anybody that she's been sexually abused. Kelly says, okay, no. And so at no time have you believed that there was any truth in what she's saying happened to her, that it happened to her. At so no time have you believed that there was any truth in what she was saying happened to her, that it happened to her. She's asking if she ever believed her at any point. Kelly says no. Okay, how many outcries do you know of at this time that Sophie has made? Kelly says, I couldn't even venture a guess as to the amount of people Michael has had her talking to. See what she did there? See what she did there? That was, I mean, deflection, bam. Ms. Lishman says, okay, objection, non-responsive. Basically, I didn't get an answer. Kelly says, I don't know the answer. Ms. Lishman says, you don't have any idea how many outcries of sexual abuse your daughter has made? No. Okay. She's made them to strangers on the internet, Kelly says. So, and then Ms. Lishman says, objection, non-responsive. Ms. Lishman says, have you done any insight, any sort of research, or gotten any insight into like the impact that it might have on Sophie emotionally or psychologically to not be believed by her mother? Objection, form, says Mr. Rootson here. Kelly answers and says, no. I want to repeat that question because it's an important and it's a very thorough question. Have you done any insight, any sort of research, or gotten any insight into like the impact that it might have on Sophie emotionally or psychologically to not be believed by her mother? I mean, you couldn't have asked that more thoroughly. So Mr. Rootson objects. Kelly says no. Okay, at least she's being honest. Miss Lishman says, okay, so you've done no independent research. Kelly says no. Miss Lishman says, and have you talked to any of your counselors or therapists or psychologists or psychiatrists about that? Kelly says yes. Okay, what have you learned? Kelly says it's not been an in-depth conversation. It was really just about the situation that was happening. So I don't. Ms. Lichman says the substance of the conversation wasn't for you to educate yourself about this kind of situation. Kelly says no. She says, okay, the substance of the conversation was to get some sort of treatment for yourself in terms of the impact that it's had on you, not necessarily Sophie. No. Okay. Are you working from home right now? Yes. How long have you been doing the working from home schedule? Sorry. Since March. Do you have any idea when you're going to have to go back into an office? No. There's no policy in place right now. No. Okay. Mr. Bellington, Jacob Bellington, when did you meet him? September 2017. How did you meet him? On Bumble. What's that? On Bumble. She's saying, I'm not asking you what you said. What is that? It's a dating app. Okay. And what attracted you to him? The way he looked. Okay. How did that relationship develop? I mean, dude, was this just like the show? I'm dying to see these. Who's dying to see these Bumble profiles, bro? Like, that's something I want to see. Who's dying to see these Bumble profiles? Type of 1 if you would love to see the Bumble profiles. Type of 2 if you're just like, hell no, I don't want to see that. I don't blame you. Thank you, Ashley Collins. Appreciate it. Let's see. I don't know. I'm not looking at chat right now, but I trust my mods and I trust their decisions. But mods, please be very selective of who you block. As long as people are being respectful, they can ask questions. I mean, I think we already know that. I mean, dude. I mean, I'm never gonna go digging for those things. And I want to be clear, don't send me them. I'm just saying hypothetically, like I would just love to see that. I mean that in the same sense of I'd love to be a fly on the wall in that during that conversation with somebody. You know what I mean? I don't literally want to see them. I'm just saying imagine imagine what they look like. Imagine what they look like in these profiles. Imagine what their bios say. You know, I think it's more fun to fill in the blanks. I think it's more fun to imagine what these Bumble profiles look like. Okay, so she says it's a dating app. Okay, what attracted you to him? The way he looked. Okay, how did that relationship develop? We went on a date and then we went on more dates. You can tell she's being a little snarky there. We went on a date and we went on more dates. Okay, I guess I'm asking for a little because, dude, listen. If Kelly is not so agitated right now in that room, she's not human. because she was getting pummeled with these questions, hardcore questions. I mean, there's just no denying that. There's just no denying that. Okay, I guess I'm asking for a little more substance. Like, at what point did it go from something kind of like, hey, he's good looking, I want to spend some time with him, to something that developed into a more serious relationship? When did you decide you wanted to be in a serious relationship with this guy? I mean, I would define serious as us deciding to move in together, which wasn't until May of 2019. I mean, okay, so you didn't get serious until May of 2019. I mean, it was serious when I introduced the kids to him. When was that? March, I believe, of 2018. You met in September 2017. You've introduced the children. What's that? 7 months later? Uh-huh. March 2018, and then a year and a few months later, you're moving in. No, I'm sorry. When we moved in, it was 2018. Oh, okay. And at what point did you tell Michael about the relationship? I don't recall. Okay. Did you tell Michael before you were going to introduce the kids to this gentleman? No. Okay. Did you tell Michael before you were, before the before the move in, that you were moving in with this gentleman? I don't remember. I believe so. You're not sure. Not sure. How would you have done that? Verbally or text message or app close? It would have been verbally or an app close. I believe if I'm not mistaken, don't quote me on this. I believe app close is an app commonly used between split couples so that they can basically everything that they're saying can be administered into court. So all their communication regarding the exchange of children and their health and blah, 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 whatever these two people would be talked about, anything that they discuss is admissible in court in their case. I believe that's I know there's an app like that. I think that's that app. Somebody in chat could confirm that. Okay, thank you, Davis. Yeah, all right. Okay, and at what point does this relationship become more volatile? Ooh, she just goes right into it. She says, I wouldn't describe it as volatile ever. You would never describe your relationship with Mr. Bellington as a volatile relationship? No. So Mowgli was born, I think you said February 2019. How soon after that did you realize that you were having some sort of mental health issue and then got the postpartum depression diagnosis? At some point between him being born and getting diagnosed. When was that? He was born in February, and I believe we already covered that I was diagnosed in March of April. So sometime in that time period. And what were the first symptoms that you had concerned that you went to consult the doctor about them? It was kind of just a motivation and also like just kind of an emotional high, emotional low. Okay. Were you acting out in any way? I mean, was your behavior changing or anything concerning about your behavior? She says, I was exhausted. Mowgli was breastfeeding every 2 hours, so I was definitely tired. Uh-huh. But I wouldn't say it was anything like significantly changed other than like pure exhaustion and probably some stress on top of that as a result. Okay. And the postpartum depression, I have to go back and look at my notes, but was that an actual diagnosis that came from your OBGYN, or she just had a suspicion and prescribed Zoloft? Now, Jamie Graham interjects here and she says, can we stop for just a second? Your iPad stopped. Okay. Sorry. Can you repeat that? Ms. Lichman says, if I can remember the diagnosis, was it an actual diagnosis? Were you actually diagnosed with postpartum depression, or was it just kind of you went to go see your OBGYN? She said, hey, these symptoms kind of sound like you would be helped or benefited by Zoloft. Kelly says, I don't know. You wrote in her records. She wrote in her records. I guess it's a mistype there. I know I went in, I had symptoms, and I came out with a prescription. So, okay, fair enough. Were you then diagnosed with any other mental health related issues? Kelly says, yes. Okay. What have you been diagnosed with? PTSD. When were you diagnosed with PTSD? June of this year. Who diagnosed you? Elsa. What? That's Elsa Marley? Yes. And you started seeing her in June. How quickly after you started seeing Elsa Marley did she give you a diagnosis of PTSD? I don't recall. How frequently were you seeing Elsa Marley in June of 2020? Was it weekly, bi-weekly? It was weekly. Weekly once a week? Yes. Okay. Are you still seeing her once weekly? No. When did you stop seeing her once weekly? I don't recall. How frequently did you see Elsa? It depends on what's going on in my life. Okay. In early September, I was going pretty frequently. Okay. And when you say pretty frequently, was it more than once a week then? At least once a week. So some weeks it was more than once. I can't recall. I can't recall if there was ever more than once a week. So she's kind of backpedaling here. But why? I mean, why? It's weird to me why she would lie about this. But I'm not sure she's lying. She could just be under pressure, pissed off, agitated. Okay, early September, at least once a week. Maybe there was more. And then after early September, did you stop going once a week? I stayed about once a week until sometime in, I would say, October. This month? Gosh, oh, my goodness. It's still only October. Yes, this month. One more day. Okay. So for the month of October, this is recent history, the past 4 weeks or so. Yes, yes. How many times have you seen Elsa this month? Probably 2 or 3. 2 or 3 times? Yeah. I just saw her yesterday, or not yesterday. When was it? Wednesday. Wednesday was your last appointment? Yes. Had Elsa diagnosed you with anything other than PTSD? No. What was the treatment regimen for the PTSD? Trauma therapy. Trauma therapy? They call it like CBT, like cognitive behavioral therapy. Right. Okay. And I'm sorry. I know I just asked you this, but I missed the answer. Has she diagnosed you with anything other than PTSD? No. Okay. Have you been diagnosed with anything other than potentially the diagnosis of postpartum and the diagnosis for PTSD? After my dad died, I was treated for depression. I don't know that there was an official diagnosis, but that was very difficult time period. And help me understand, what time period was that? I'm sorry, it's slipping my mind. August of 2019. Do you need to take a break? No. So it's funny here. It looks like the way this is typed here, this could be a mistype. But Miss Lichman asks, and help me understand, what time period was that? I'm sorry, it's slipping my mind. And then Kelly responds, August of 2019. Do you need to take a break? So like she snarks right at her, right? She snarks right at her because she says it's slipping her mind. So they're having this little battle of wits, which I find pretty amusing. Like I said, you can't make this up, folks. This this happened in this room, and I'm picturing it happening like it's in front of my face, and I find it really, really fascinating. So Miss Lichman says, we've been going for about an hour. Let's take a break, okay? So which was a smart move. That was a cool move. She was like, yeah, she kind of put it on her. She was just like, you know what? Yeah, let's take a break. That's a good idea. And Mr. Russo says, yeah, that's a good idea. And The court reporter says we are off the record at 10:48 a.m. The deposition was in recess from 10:48 to 10:59. So they took about a 10. And the reporter says we are back on the record at 10:59 a.m. And this is kind of funny. So Ms. Lishman says, I asked you about other things that you had been diagnosed with, and you were mentioning a diagnosis that happened corresponding with the passing of your father. Kelly says, yes. And that was, to your recollection, August of 2019 was when he passed. Yes. Okay. When was the point when did you have a symptom that made you seek treatment? In October. Ms. Lishman says, hey, John, we're getting a lot of feedback on the phone on your end. Would you mind please just muting your phone? And Kelly's like, he's eating that pizza. I can hear it. And Jamie Graham's like, he's eating pizza. And John Helms is like, oh, I'm sorry. I thought I had muted. I'm sorry. So Jamie's like, it's okay. And they're probably laughing, which is funny. So Miss Lishman says, okay, October of 2019. And you're having, I'm assuming you were having some emotional issues that were kind of acute based on the passing of your father. I mean, it was a combination of issues. Yes, my dad was kind of the tip of the iceberg, or what is it? Like the bucket was full and tipped over. Yeah. And who did you go see in October of 2019 about that? Kelly says, I went to the C Center. Can you spell that for me? SEAY. And who did you see at the C Center? The psychiatrist that they have there. Did you know their names? No, I mean, it's on your front page of notes that I don't know the name. And what I'm referring to, guys, when she says that, so Kelly is again being very snarky here, and she says it's on the front page of your notes, because I skipped through all of that, but at the beginning they were discussing her mental health and her medications that she was taking and things of that nature. And when asked what the name of her doctors were, she could not say what the name of the doctors were that prescribed her medication. I find that very, very interesting. She couldn't recall any of her doctors' names or therapists' names. She recalled one by their first name, if I remember reading that correctly. So I find that pretty interesting, because I remember seeing someone professionally in my younger days. I remember seeing quite a few people in my younger days professionally. And I knew them all by name. Some preferred me to call them by their first name, but I still knew their last name. Let me ask you something, guys. Type of 1, if you've ever seen a psychiatrist and didn't know their name. Type of 2, if you remember, you don't have to this day, but if in the past 2 years you've seen a doctor, can you remember every doctor that you've seen professionally on a repeated basis, because she's getting treatment, mind you? Type of 2 if you can't remember their names. I can't even remember how I worded that. I need to use that poll thing. I mean, because if I saw, there are doctors now, my childhood doctors, I can't really remember all their names. I can remember a couple of them. But you better believe that somebody that I'm telling my most intimate secrets to and confiding my deepest feelings to, and I'm paying them for that, well, I'm going to know their name, especially if they're prescribing me medication. I mean, yeah, you know, I mean, if it was in the past year or so, you know what I'm saying? Or even 2 years. I mean, I find that strange that she couldn't remember any of their names, but yet she's on medication. She's admitting to being on medication. So that leads me to question A, does she genuinely just not remember their names? Maybe the medication she was taking had an effect on her memory. Possibly. Sure. Or B, they weren't prescribed at all. She was taking medication, but it wasn't prescribed. Or C, she's just straight lying here and she was never on any medication at all. She never saw anybody. But I don't know. I'll let you guys decide amongst yourselves, not in the chat, but amongst yourselves, because there's no way to prove that. And do you recall how many sessions you had with this psychiatrist? It was 2 weeks. I actually went in on a daily basis. And then I had 3 sessions a week for a period of time. What period of time? Between November and February. November of 2019 to February of 2020? Uh-huh. And in these sessions with the psychiatrist, was it always the same person that you were seeing, or was it a different person? The psychiatrist was not who I was seeing. I was seeing the therapist. Okay, who was the therapist? Gosh, Paula. I know I already said that. It's a different Paula. Paula. Do you know what her credentials were? Was she a psychologist? Was she an LPC? I mean, she's licensed through, she works through the Texas health system. So she's employed by them. I don't know what their credentials are. Okay. So why did you stop seeing Paula in February of 2020? It was, I had completed the sessions and that I needed to complete with her, and kind of moved into like Lisa Epps, who was my grief counselor at the time. Does Lisa Epps also work for C Center? No. How did you find Lisa Epps? Psychology.com. What did you choose to transition from the therapist Paula to Lisa Epps? The treatment plan that I had agreed on, her program had ended. What kind of program was it? It was called an IOP program. It was an outpatient program for people dealing with mental health. And it had a time limit. Well, insurance only covers a certain amount of visits. So yes, it had a time limit. You stopped seeing Paula because of insurance and because I was ready, she said. What indicated to you that you were ready to leave Paula, but you still needed to go find somebody else? Got her. Well, it was actually a requirement that you can't leave the program unless you have a therapist that will continue to see you on an ongoing basis. Why is that a requirement? To ensure that you're taking care of yourself mentally, emotionally, and physically. Is there any concern there about suicidal ideation? No. Okay. But they want to make sure that you have continuity and that you're seeing somebody. I'm pretty sure it's a CYA legal document that they have to fill out. So I can't, it's what I had to provide them. It's what every patient that gets, it's not unique to me, is what I'm trying to say. And you found Lisa Epps independently? She wasn't referred? No. Okay. Did they give you people? Did they refer you to people leaving C Center? No, because I had already established a relationship with Lisa. When did you start seeing Lisa? September of 2019. So you were seeing Lisa and Paula at the same time? Yes. Paula was group therapy, which is not as personalized as individual therapy, which is why that requirement is in place. How did you find C Center? It was referred to me by Lisa. Here's the timeline. Your father passes. You start seeing Lisa Epps, September of 2019. She refers to you. She refers you to C Center. So you're seeing both Lisa and doing a program at C Center with Paula beginning in October of 2019. In February of 2020, you drop off the C Center, but you continue to see Lisa. Is that accurate? Correct. Okay. Other than Lisa Epps and Paula, were you seeing anybody else during that time period? Yes. Okay. Who else were you seeing? A psychiatrist over like Teledoc with my company. And what was their name? I haven't seen him for am I allowed to look at something to tell you? Or if you don't remember, that's fine. Remember, you're going to get that RADA sheet. I don't remember. Okay, great. So if you could just go back in and remember on that errata, if you could just fill in the correction, the person's name. Sure. For all these that you kind of can't recall. Okay. Like Paula's last name, for example. And she says, great. And then Lishman says, this person, when did you start seeing a psychiatrist? So she's being kind of snarky here too. Lishman is taking jabs at the fact that she doesn't remember these people's names. You know, she's got first names for these therapists, and now she has a psychiatrist who is just this person who she can't remember their name. So she's like, so this person, when did you start seeing a psychiatrist? In September of 2019, probably around the same time, because Lisa's therapist, right? So psychologists can't prescribe medication. You have to kind of do it in combination of psychologists and psychiatrists together, which is true. When it comes to medication, that's true. But there are some, I don't know if this is fact, but I believe there are some psychologists that can, well, not prescribe medication, but can recommend medication. So yeah, I guess they would still have to go see a psychiatrist and get that approved and prescribed. I think so. Okay, so did Lisa refer you to the psychiatrist? No. Did Lisa tell you that you needed to see a psychiatrist or to get medicated? No. What? What were you diagnosed with through C Center? Depression. Was it specified? Was it more specific? Or was it just general depressive disorder? I don't remember. Convenient. Did anybody through C Center prescribe you anything? Yes, I've answered that. What did they prescribe you? The several medications that we were trying for depression for the first page of your notes. And she goes, right. Go to the Wellburton, or got to the Wellburton. But you told me it was through psychiatrists at Texas Presbyterian that you were doing that, not through C Center. C Center is owned by Texas Presbyterian. So that's the same thing? Correct. So there's two separate places during that time period where you were getting prescribed something. No. Okay. So if there's, wow, man, this is insane. Okay. So if through Texas Presbyterian / C Center, you're getting this kind of, you're trying different medications, you think that it was 3 different ones. And then you're telling me that also on September 2019, you're seeing a separate psychiatrist through Teledoc. What was that person prescribing you? Well, I didn't go into the C Center until October. I started seeing him in September. Did I start seeing him in September? I'm going to object as non-responsive. My question is, and then Kelly cuts her off again. I don't remember when I started seeing him. What was the psychiatrist on the Teledoc prescribing you? He was prescribing me after okay. So can I explain how the program works? No, ma'am. My question is, what was the psychiatrist on Teledoc prescribing you? Depression medication. What? Or Kelly says, Wellbutrin. Okay, that's got to be how you say that medication. Wellbutrin. Anything else? No, not that I can recall. So it could have been other things. Yes. Would you have any records of that? I'm sure he has records. Did you tell the psychiatrist on Teledoc who is prescribing you things that you were also being prescribed things from somebody else? No, because they were conflicting. The timelines didn't overlap. Okay. Were you telling the people who were prescribing you at Texas Presbyterian / C Center that you were also seeing a psychiatrist through Teledoc? They require you to have an outside psychiatrist. So yes. Okay. So your answer is yes. They knew that you were prescribing that they knew that they were prescribing you something through Texas Presbyterian C Center, and somebody else through Teledoc was also prescribing you something. Mr. Rootson objects to form. Kelly says no. Ms. Lishman says, okay, Kelly, I'm asking you the question. Texas Presbyterian. Yes. Did you tell them that you were seeing a psychiatrist through Teledoc who was also prescribing you something? Mr. Rootson objects to form. Ms. Lishman says, what's wrong with that question? Mr. Rootson says, because she's already testified that they were not at the same time. And your question is misleading in thinking that they were both at the same time. That's actually a good point. It's actually a good point. Ms. Lishman says, well, I guess the record will show what the testimony has been. But my question is, did you tell them that you were also being prescribed something by this Teledoc psychiatrist? They required it, so yes. Okay. I don't know how else to answer that. And did you tell the psychiatrist on Teledoc that you were also being prescribed things through Texas Presbyterian? I wasn't prescribed things at that time, at the same time. Did you tell them? There was no overlapping. So basically the answer is no, and she's trying to avoid saying no. Because the question is not whether or not you were taking them at the same time. The question is, did you tell these people that you were on this medication at this point? Because, I mean, when have you ever walked into a therapist, a mental health professional's office, and because I can't recall any time that I've ever walked into a mental health professional's office when I was an adult and they didn't ask me if I've ever been on any medication, or if I'm on any medication, or if I've ever been on any medication. I can't recall any time that didn't happen. So it's almost safe to assume that both of these different separate facilities, which are located in the same place, by the way, they're two separate of the same things, according to Kelly in her testimony here, right? So two of the same things, right? And what I find really, really humorous here is she's completely avoiding saying no. I find that really, really interesting. She keeps saying no, or she's not saying no. She's trying to avoid being able to, or being held responsible that, yeah, okay. The way I see it is you could call one of these places and find out. Kelly's worried about them saying, okay, we asked her and she never told us that she was on any of these other medications. She's trying to defend her not asking or not answering the question by saying they weren't overlapping. They weren't at the same time. So I didn't feel the requirement to tell anybody, to tell either party which medication I was taking from the other party. Which, I mean, it's very, very suspicious to me. Why not just answer the question? And why is her attorney objecting? I find that weird. And mind you guys, what we're hearing right now, we're hearing somebody who is, if a judge is listening to this, you know what I'm saying? Like, this, not, how is this a good look for Kelly at all? She's not being honest. She's not being forthcoming. And she basically testified herself that when her own child comes to her with symptoms that could lead to that could be a result of SA, well, she says the thought never crossed her mind to even worry about it. And that she did pretty much no research, no independent research into the subject. She said she was all good, so she never bothered to look into it again, and that she basically just didn't feel the need to even inquire about it when her 9-year-old child is complaining about pains in her private. Okay, so I wasn't prescribed things at the same time. Did you tell them? There was no overlapping. You were required to see the psychiatrist in the first 2 weeks of this program, that is at the C Center. After that, you are required to have an outside psychiatrist to help you maintain your medication when you're in the group therapy. You're telling me that Texas Presbyterian C Center has a psychiatrist there, but referred you to and told you had to go find somebody else to prescribe you things? Yes, but you're also telling me that they also had prescribed you 3 different medications during that time period. Yes, during the 2-week time period. So somebody who is prescribing you things and you can prescribe, in other words, somebody who has prescriptive authority at Texas Presbyterian told you that you had to go get prescriptions from somebody else? The therapist did, yes. Are you aware of how these treatment programs work? Objection, non-responsive. Other than the PTSD, the postpartum depression, and the general depression diagnosis, have you been diagnosed with anything else of mental health, of a mental health related? No. Okay. Have you ever been diagnosed with any sort of anxiety disorder? I've talked about anxiety, but I've not had a diagnosis. No. Okay. So have you been diagnosed with any sort of sleep disorder? No. Have you been diagnosed with a personality disorder? No. At any time in your life, have you been diagnosed with any sort of borderline personality disorder? No. Okay. Other than the Xanax, the Wellbutrin, and the Zoloft, and then 3 other different medications that you can't recall what they were at this time, have you been diagnosed? Have you been prescribed any other sort of medication relating to a mental health related issue or diagnosis? No, not that I can recall. Okay, other than these different people that were being talked about, Elsa Marley, C Center, several different Paulas, two different Paulas. We also talked about Lisa Epson, the psychiatrist on the teledoc, and the psychiatrist at Texas Presbyterian. Have you seen C Center? C Center and Texas Presbyterian is the same thing. Okay. Have you seen any other counselor, therapist, psychiatrist, or psychologist? No. In your whole life? Oh, in my life? Because you also told me in 2007 you had been diagnosed with something and got some Zoloft. Uh-huh. Yeah, uh-huh. Actually, I didn't know if it was Zoloft. I don't remember what it was. That was like 13 years ago. It was something. I couldn't tell you who the doctor was. By the way, guys, when I was 8 years old, between 7 and 8 years old, both those years, I was on Ritalin and Tegretol. I remember this vividly. I was 8 years old, people. Ritalin and Tegretol. Okay? So how she doesn't recall is beyond me. Okay. Do you remember why you were seeing that doctor in 2007? Yeah. And what was that? I was experiencing, I had an event that triggered some depression. What event? You know what? I'm not going to get into that. That's crossing the line. And as a result of that, you had to seek some. Do you need to take a break? No, I'm okay. Are you okay? Yeah. As a result of that, do you recall how long you had to see someone to talk to about that? No. Okay. Do you remember if it was like more than a few months? It was not more than a few months. No. Okay. And do you recall how long you were on the Zoloft at that time? Not more than a few months. Okay. That I can recall. Or whatever medication you got. Yeah. Okay. So between 2007 and 2019, you did not see any sort of counselor, therapist, psychologist, psychiatrist in your recollection. Michael and I attended couples counseling. There we go. Okay. Who was that with? Several people. The only one that I can remember the name of is Jennifer. She says her last name here, but I want to quit doing that. Okay. And in that couples counseling, did anybody diagnose you with anything? No. Did anybody prescribe you anything? No. Okay. Other than the couples counseling and these other things that you mentioned between 2007 and 2019 to the present, is there anybody, have you seen any other psychologist, counselor, psychiatrist, therapist that you can recall? No, not that I can recall. All right. So I'm going to leave it at that, guys, for now. I know where I'm at. I'm going to save that. I'm just going to go over stuff and talk to you guys in chat for a little bit before we call it. I haven't had a chance to look at chat because I was reading. Listen. The whole trauma thing, I mean, that can be valid, I guess, but you know, she doesn't seem to have an answer for the most convenient questions to not have an answer for. So, I mean, I'm personally getting an idea of the kind of person that we're dealing with here. I've already been getting an idea of the type of person that we've been dealing with when it comes to the behavior towards the court, when it comes to the court, because it's just funny to me now that there's a new judge, now that there's different staff assigned to the case, everything shifted. Now that Michael doesn't have an attorney representing him, everything is shifted. So after, and guys, I'm not even a quarter of the way done with this deposition, people. I'm not even a quarter of the way done with it. And we're seeing a very, very clearly dishonest person, in my opinion. Someone very dishonest. Someone very, very dodgy, very deflective, very sarcastic. And just the kind of person that I imagined her being, based on the behavior that I'm seeing taking place against my neighbors in this community and myself. So yeah, I think it's safe to say that I mean, I'm not a judge, I'm not an attorney, but how did this deposition not factor into the decisions, the most recent decisions that the courts made? I find that fascinating. Punky Banana, that's a good point. I'd like to see that too. I don't have that in my possession, but I will request it and I will read it. Absolutely. Absolutely, 100%. You're absolutely right. And yes, Melissa, I will be going back to covering true crime cases soon. Very soon, as a matter of fact. There's one case that I'm going to be discussing that nobody seems to be discussing. And there's another case that I may discuss, and it's a difficult one because another creator made me aware of it. And that creator was like, I can't touch this case because it's too much. But I'm struggling with this because it's such a gruesome, horrible case that I'm on the fence of, because I don't want to talk about it. It's crossed the line for me to a certain degree as far as what I'm willing to like stomach. But at the same time, maybe these cases need to be talked about just as much, if not more, as any of these other cases. And maybe I need to dig deep and find the strength to cover it and talk about it. So I'm probably going to do that. But it's tough. But there's another case that I'm definitely going to be talking about. It won't take me very long to talk about it. But it's something that troubles me, and it does take place in Texas, and it does involve the system in Texas. So I'm going to be discussing that too. Summer Holt, thank you so much for the super sticker. I appreciate you. I'm going to be getting back to Baby James. Don't worry. When the trial starts for that, I'm going to be getting back to that. Okay, Louisiana girl, don't worry. Louisiana girl is referring to little Hutch, James Hutchinson, whose mother is going to be on trial for allegedly attempting to abandon her children at a park, and as she drove off, she allegedly confessed to driving off and running over. I believe he was 5 years old. God, I haven't talked about it in so long. I apologize if I get any details wrong, guys, because I've been so consumed with other things too. Summer Wells, I've been so consumed with that. Yeah, I in the Morphew case. But yeah, horrible case. But interesting enough, the police can't find any evidence to corroborate her confession. No physical evidence. So I find that disturbing because she's pleading not guilty based on this, I think. And yeah, it's a really disturbing case because this kid, he was like, no, you're not leaving us, and latched onto the door, and she drove off. And as she drove off, she allegedly ran him over. Now, apparently the story is that they took him back to their house, and the other kids, she went and found the other kids and picked them up, took them back to the house, but also brought little Hutch's body back, and then allegedly disposed of his body in a river. Now, there's I'm not sure on which side, but a grandparent is now, I believe, saying that they don't believe that little Hutch was dumped in the river. So I don't know, but we're going to get a lot of details on that once the trial starts. And I'll be covering that trial as best as I possibly can. But yeah, I started talking about this a while back. But yeah, what I'll be talking about, and I don't even know all the names, I just read the article, But as far as the Texas thing, so I'm gonna give you guys a quick little synopsis of the case. So you got this guy. He's relatively young. He's an adult male in prison. He is locked in a cell with a 70-something-year-old convicted SA offender towards children. Horrible, horrible crimes, multiple victims. And it turns out that he had victimized this young man's, his cellmate's younger sister. And so this young man ended up murdering him in his cell by beating him to death. Now, what makes this story interesting? What makes this story interesting? Because a lot of you guys are sitting here going, right on. Good for him. Yeah, justice, right? Well, like it or not, this guy was cheated out of due process, first of all. But one could say that this was entrapment as well, because this man was apparently taunting him and telling him details about what he had done. And he found out about it. And, you know, his instinct wasn't to haul off and kill this man. His instinct was to go to the prison board or to somebody in an authoritative position in the prison and ask for a transfer and get out of that cell. And they denied him that. And I guess one thing led to another, and then he ended up beating this man to death and murdering him. And he got multiple decades. He got decades. I don't know exactly the number right now because I don't have it in front of me, but he got decades added onto his sentence. Now, is that justice? So I'll be talking about that. I'm going to be diving pretty deep into that coming soon. So, guys, part 2, we'll be doing this soon. As soon as I possibly can. I don't know, but I love you. And we will do this again very, very soon, my friends.